Boom, baby.
Ha! Boom, baby.
Now dig on this.
And we're here.
We're back again.
Oi.
Welcome to this week's episode of Classic Movie Banter. You know that show where I, that guy Brenton, and that other guy on the opposite end of the table, Nathan.
Hello.
We talk about films that are 20 years or older. 20 years.
Like us, Brenton.
That's a long time. That's a long...
That's an age I haven't heard in a long, long time.
We discuss whether these films are still worth watching today.
Like a succulent meal.
Nathan, we're here.
We're here.
I'm just going to get straight into it. The Emperor's New Groove from 2000. And, of course, we're doing this because it's Nathan's birthday episode,
Yeah.
people. Woo, woo,
This sounds
woo,
like such
woo,
a vain
woo.
move. Because, yeah, this is the week I aged up to 24. What a wonderful year, Brenton. I feel so much older. What a bloody gift. Getting around the sun. What a progress. But anyway.
I'm happy for you. This whole episode is dedicated to you, my friend.
No, it's not. It's so vain as well. Like, whenever people sing to you, it's like, I just stop it. Like, I don't want to be about me. But in saying that, like, hypocritically, I've chosen the most vain film I could have. Because it's a film about, like, a guy who is the most vain character in the world. Like...
Nathan, we're talking about this because it's your suggestion, and also because
Yeah.
you've spoken about this film a few times before
So many
in various
times.
episodes. I think the first time was actually our 7 seasons, our very first 7 seasons, where we
That's
talked
right.
about our favorite film experiences. I think you
Yeah.
mentioned The Emperor's New Groove, with good reason.
Yeah, I've wanted to talk about this movie for a long time. We waited till our 20-year rule expired, and it's the year of our Lord, Kuzco. So we can finally talk about it, Brenton. So I'm gonna sit back on my birthday, bloody lie back on a lilo, and just have you pitch to me, Brenton, what on earth The Emperor's New Groove is about. Can you pitch me the movie?
Do you guys, well, Nathan, do you know that classic fable of The Emperor's New Clothes?
Yes, I do, Brenton. That iconic story.
For those of you who don't know, it's about this emperor that is so vain and needs to have the next best thing all the time, and he loves all of his lavish clothes and his gold and his palace and whatnot.
Does that have anything to do with The Emperor's New Groove?
Nathan, the reason that I told you that
Yes.
is because that's actually got nothing to do with this film at all.
Yeah, and as a kid, I was so fucking confused because I eventually heard that story after I saw this movie, and I'm like, this has nothing to do with Kuzco. Where's Krong? Where are they all?
Totally.
So what's this movie about then, Brenton?
I don't understand. But the point is that this is the Disney version, I guess, the loose interpretation of that story, and we follow...
I think it's only in title, which we'll get to eventually.
Who knows? But we basically follow this young emperor Kuzco, who, as I said, is the titular emperor.
Yes.
And he is very vain. He is extremely selfish. Some would say unlikable.
I didn't know you were in this movie, Brenton.
What a story, Mark. And I think he's actually the emperor of the Inca Empire, is my understanding of this, by the way.
It's like that kind of like world, that South American architecture, yeah.
Yeah, so he's a selfish man, basically, and he decides that he's going to build his new holiday house, basically, on this random hilltop, where resides a peaceful village, and I guess the head of this village, Pacha, is disappointed, to say the least, that his village will be destroyed to make way for this summer vacation spot for the emperor. Things come to pass. The emperor is stripped of his power
Ooh.
by his advisor, his evil advisor, Yzma, and her lackey, Kronk. And he must learn the value, I guess, of human life, is kind of the point.
Right. Why people just matter if they're not royalty. Or just basically not himself.
And yeah, pretty much, in order to gain the trust of Pacha so that Pacha will help him regain his power and thus his royalty. And that is the story of The Emperor's New Groove and what it's going for. And it's all told in this lavish kind of Disney hand-drawn animation that has got some banging tunes and lots of modern jokes for its audience.
That's a great way of opening it, Brenton, because this film feels so modern, doesn't it? Like the humor itself, and it's funny that it arrives like at the year 2000, you know, at the edge of the new millennium. Like it feels like this is a very this film could come out today and the humor would be as relevant to audiences.
Totally. Well, Nathan, since you're kicking us off, Keep going, mate. What did you think of this film?
Mate, this film's excellent. This film's really, really excellent. But you know what I learned? I'm so biased. You know what I mean? Like this for new listeners. I've told in the podcast before. This is the very first movie I saw in a cinema. So like, this is just my introduction to movie making. Like in a big room, and also like I've been quoting the lines from the movie for so long because this movie is so quotable. Like one of the most quotable movies ever made, I think.
Yeah.
But and yet in saying that, like it's funny me sitting down and watching it, I forget it's not that much of a movie. Per se, like it has like the bare bones required for a movie. It has a plot and it has like character arcs, but it's not aiming to be a deep movie. This movie instead is aiming just to tell as many jokes in the most creative way as possible.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it, I guess. And I guess it's funny that you've kind of come to that after like years of like.
I know, and I'm so heartbroken, Brenton, because I love this movie and I still love this movie and I still think it's excellent. However, at this viewing, maybe it's for the podcast as well, I noticed a lot more holes in it than I have ever noticed before.
That's interesting.
What are you thinking?
Okay, so well, for me, I really like this movie. I'm just going to start by saying that. I really, really love this movie. As a kid, I loved this movie. I had this on DVD and I remember watching it many times and loving the humor, loving the characters, and I still today, I think the characters are probably the thing about this film that it's its biggest pro, let's say, is its characters and use of those characters in the film, because every single character in this film I think is fantastic. I actually can't think of one that kind of sucks. The only one is maybe there's a squirrel that's in this film.
Oh please, that squirrel's not really a character as much, is it? Like,
well, I mean, like it's a character, but I guess you could say that's probably the most like stereotypical, like cute kind of sassy kind of animal character. But apart from that, I think the characters are really well developed and they interact really well, and that's the source of the humor. What I think about this movie is that it takes a really, really, really kind of simple theme, right? We all like, it's all about like, vanity and being a selfish prick, and how someone like that learns, like I said, the value of human life and human decency, and learns to give a little, which, is a pretty standard, and, it's an important theme. I'm not saying it's something that can't be explored.
Yeah.
But what I think this film does really well is that it explores it in a really fun, zany kind of way, and creative way, especially in a setting that's creative with characters that I think are really creative. And I like, whilst you said the plot, like it's not very plot heavy, I think the plot itself is actually an interesting plot in terms of like how it blends fantasy elements, how it blends like historical elements of, like I said, the Inca Empire.
But that sounds more like it's world building as opposed to plot. You know what I mean? Or should I say maybe the story? I feel like the actual.
No, I can't really talk about the details of what I want to talk about the story, but let's just say there are some fantasy elements in this that involves one perception of themselves. Literally, and how one is perceived, who someone is based around their body and around their presence, and how that can change and whatnot. And I think that's a really interesting concept.
It is, like, it's on the poster. Like, everyone knows the premise that he turns into a llama, right? Like, we can talk about that.
It is in the promotional material, because I remember watching the trailer for this as a kid, so we can talk about that. The fact that he like is turned into a llama, and that is like him at the bottom of the heap, is one. It's a fun kind of thing for kids, I think. But two, I think it's an interesting way.
It is, but you need to know going in that he turns into a llama, because it's like the driving like catalyst of this movie, and like so much of it rests on this emperor suddenly becoming a llama, and it's great. I must admit, the premise of it is genius. You're right, and like I like the story of it. But with that talk with the story, I don't want to talk about the actual storyline itself, but I do want to say I think this movie prioritizes jokes over the story. Like, there'll be moments where like a character's going through something, or like, it'll build towards a moment, but then like a gag will undercut it, or you realize an entire scene has just been building towards a gag per se. Like, when I was rewatching this, I realized there are so many scenes in this movie that maybe don't need to be there for the story. They're there just to be a gag, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, I see your point. Yeah, and I probably agree with your point. I don't know if that's kind of what I take away from this film. Like, in terms of if I was going to criticize it, I don't know if that's necessarily the thing I would pick out, because I still think the plot's pretty strong, and I think like the characters themselves are pretty strong, and there's lots of moments between characters that
they feel like the most like fresh characters, and they're still so fresh, because I feel like this is Disney really getting into grips, like right in the Eisner era of like them being self-aware and them just being like, kind of sarcastic and just not really caring, and like the voice cast across the board is incredible. Like David Spade as Kuzco just nails that sardonic, like selfish emperor.
Yeah. We can talk about, like, I think the whole voice cast is, I think, like, everyone just brings their A game. From David Spade, like you said, I think John Goodman as Pacha is such a wonderful. Pacha for me is like probably my favorite character in the piece.
He's also the heart, isn't he?
He is. He's almost like the real protagonist of this.
Yeah, he really is. In fact, I don't know why they have the antagonist as the main character. Like,
well, that's it. So Eartha Kitt as Yzma, I think, is absolutely, like, I think that's a masterpiece in terms of voice acting.
She's like the ultimate Disney villain, isn't she?
Totally. Patrick Warburton, as Kronk. Again, just like, we'll talk about Kronk, I think, a lot in the spoiler section of this review. And also, I just wanted to give a shout out to John Fiedler as the old man at the start of the film, and kind of comes out at the end of the film.
Fantastic.
And that's interesting, because that's the voice actor that plays Piglet as well. In I don't know if you could tell that in Winnie the Pooh. So yeah, bring it back to Disney. But yeah, I think the whole voice cast is just absolutely stellar. I think the art direction in this is great, not only from like
it's not as breathtaking as like Lion King or like the vistas of like they show some of the nature of like Peru, but not like, you know, not as much as you'd think.
I was just going to say, I think the character design is spot on. For all the characters, I think it's really original and spot on. I also think the locations, I think the locations, while they're not maybe as majestic as say, the sun bloody rising, you know, over that waterfall looks over nice. Africa and Lion King, but I think like the palace like looks amazing. Yeah. Like scenes that there's some scenes where you see the grand scope of the land and whatnot. And I just like this art direction. I like the way they took it. I think the soundtrack and the music are absolutely incredible.
Insane. Also, the best song maybe put into a Disney movie opens this movie. Like, the opening song is outstanding, Brenton.
True.
Who did they get to sing it? I forget his name.
I'm not sure, but I just gotta hand it to it, because if you're gonna talk about the technical elements of this film, that might be the cream of the crop. Like, it's like the voice acting's up there, but like the music itself, I think, is just stellar. Like,
which is so funny for a non-musical film as well from Disney.
That's it. Like you have this amazing opening kind of groovy number, but then you also have like kind of beautiful themes such as like Pacha's theme and the village theme and whatnot.
You have a chase scene, and the theme music to that's probably the best electro funk you'll ever see in your life, electro jazz. And then also, but it's so funny because like poor Sting, because, you know, despite the fact he was attached to this project and he got booted out halfway through the development, like he got his one song during the credits, and it doesn't really match the movie, does it?
And no, it doesn't. It's obvious the direction must have changed, or Sting just maybe wasn't following the direction of the film, which is maybe that's why he left. But
and it's so funny. I remember as a kid in the cinema when like the credits came on after this outstanding movie, and then like Sting's music like cues in, and I'm like, such a sad song to sit through after this joyous ride. Like, it's just so totally inconsistent. Yeah. But yeah, do you want to talk maybe about like how this, like what happened with this movie? Like,
well, I think you know a bit more about that.
Well, yeah, because last year, or at the start, last year when we were recommending stuff to watch, I recommended The Sweatbox, which is the documentary on how they made The Emperor's New Groove, and it's very rare that Disney actually hasn't let this out. So, during the process of Emperor's New Groove, it was originally going to be a musical called Kingdom of the Sun, a la The Lion King and Mulan and all that kind of stuff. But then the project changed because they're going to have Sting write all the music for it, like Elton John did for Lion King. But for a various number of reasons, like just the direction of the project was just not where it needed to be, and they rehired and fired a lot of people, including Sting. And then it ended up with the film we have today. And like, there's lots of like how they would've, but like, honestly, don't listen to it from me. Watch the documentary The Sweatbox, and if you love Emperor's New Groove, Sweatbox is a great companion piece for it. If you haven't seen The Emperor's New Groove, still watch New Groove first before Sweatbox, because Sweatbox is really enriched by the fact that like you've seen this movie. Because if you watch Sweatbox first, you're probably going to watch New Groove feeling a little bit bitter that you didn't get this like Lion King epic musical in South America that you would have gotten.
I also just wanted to say as well, in terms of being a kind of a fun story and a really interesting and inspired idea. It's funny because did you know that actually the playwright David Mamet actually said that he considers this script to be one of the most brilliantly innovative in which Hollywood had produced in recent years at the time.
I mean, he's right. Good on him. Like, he's so correct. Like, the writing, I mean, we talk about how quotable this line is, but the writing is outstanding. Like, and every word that is said needs to be there. Like,
Totally.
there are a couple gags I'm not a big fan of in the movie. There's not really spoilers. I'm not a big fan of Kuzco freezing the movie. I'm not a big fan of that.
Oh yeah, well, I guess I can add on to the back of that. I don't know if the freezing is the issue. For me, probably this film's biggest problem that I took away from it watching it again is actually, and you kind of hinted at it before when you said that it's interesting that the antagonist is the protagonist of the film, which is kind of true here. But for me, given that the first 2/3 of this film, Kuzco...
He's an asshole.
It's not even that. He's kind of fucking evil, to be honest.
He really is.
Which is kind of true, I guess, to a certain... You could argue that that's true in terms of certain tyrannical figures, throughout history. Like,
which is all the royals, isn't it?
You could say that, but my point is, if you're going to make that character the protagonist and have this theme of and this story based around this person that learns the value of human life and whatnot, that's an interesting idea. But I think they take it too far.
I agree.
At the start.
He's very unlikable, isn't he?
We needed to see someone that could be undermined, I think, earlier, and not just from a fact that they'd fucking turned into a llama, but that there are some insecurities there, and there are some,
Well, that's the thing. He has no redeeming qualities, like, for the first...
Yeah, that's it. Something to make him just...
He doesn't do anything good, and he's... The only reason he's not, and completely unlikable is because he's in juxtaposition to Yzma.
That's it.
And we see an even more eviler character. But even at least she's trying to help people. Not really help people. I mean, she's still trying to do something for the Empire. She has this vision, but I don't think it's that much better than Kuzco's, to be honest.
I don't think I can fully criticize it because of where we go with this character, which I think is good. I just think at the start there just needed to be a tiny bit more humanity as a way in, because Pacha is a great juxtaposition to Kuzco, but if there had have just been some little kind of triggers, I guess, put in there at the start, it just would have been a more interesting character arc, and that's really the only criticism I have, in terms of what I took away.
I mean,
from
I
this.
so agree with you, dude. I remember sitting through this movie, when I was watching it today, and just thinking, God, Kuzco's really unlikable. More unlikable than I remember, actually.
Yeah.
He's just... he really says some stuff, especially after the waterfall scene when he's talking to Pacha, and I'm just geez, it's just... He's just horrible for no apparent reason as well. Yeah, sure, an emperor can be selfish to a degree, but what he's saying is just so heartless. It's just... And even when he's, if he begins his redemption arc, even at the start of that, you just think, does he really deserve it at the end? It's
Well, that's it. But what's interesting, all I can say is that as a child, when I watched this film, I didn't have this issue because I thought that Kuzco was funny. I thought Kuzco was likable because he turns into a llama, and that's fun. That's a fun idea, and it's something to get into. And look, again, I think this story is great. I think the screenplay is really inspired and fun and great and zany. It's just that's just the one arc that I'm just man, if they just had they were onto something that was really, really special, I think. And if with that character, if they just kind of tightened it up around the first 2/3, yeah.
But you bring up a really good point, because as a kid, I was negatively influenced by Kuzco, because as a kid, I thought he was so funny, so I acted a little bit like him, because I'm when you see a funny character, you absorb them a little bit.
You try to emulate that, yeah.
And when I was 5 years old, and I saw this movie, and I'm oh, this is a funny guy, I remember saying to my parents when they'd hug me goodnight, I'd say no touchy, no touch. And they would be so heartbroken. They're oh, okay, if you don't want that. And then sidle off. And then I remember also going up to my father in the office, and there's a scene where Kuzco screams into Pacha's ear, "I don't deal with peasants." And I remember doing that to my father, and he was deaf from it, and he was don't do that. Do not scream in someone's ear.
Wow.
It's not funny. But I'm no, it's funny when Kuzco does it, and Dad's please stop acting like this guy. It's not good.
Nathan, we need to have the talk.
Oh no, Brenton, don't make me take off the crown.
Don't be a dick, Tater.
Wow, well done, Brenton. Thank you for that. I also want to ask you, rewatching this, do you think there's a bit of a romantic plot between Kuzco and Pacha?
Nathan, I kind of want to get into that in the later segment, because I know we've got a special segment coming up in this.
Oh, we do, but but as an adult watching this movie, I forgot how much sexual undertones there might have been between Kuzco and Pacha, because when they keep on arguing, they talk about their meeting as if it was like a one-night stand.
Dude, can we talk about this later on? Like, can we save this? Like, can we
All right, we'll bloody bookmark it. Listeners, stay tuned. We're going to bring it back.
bookmark this, and then we'll talk about it later on.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
Since this is your birthday episode, Nathan, what would you rate? Thumbs up or thumbs down for The Emperor's New Groove?
What I put on, we'll see if what I put on Thursday night in a heartbeat, but like, it's very interesting because like I'm more saying this to people who have never seen this movie before. If you didn't grow up with it and you're an adult and you're maybe like going through some Disney movies and you're like, oh, Emperor's New Groove, should I give it a watch? I don't know actually, Brenton, because as a movie on its own, I don't know if like, oh no, it's excellent. What am I saying? I don't think go into it I think the story's a little bit simple, so don't go in expecting like to feel deep or to feel, you know, moved or like you've learned an innovative lesson. I think just go in expecting to laugh a lot at some very zany characters. So yeah, I'm going to recommend it on those grounds. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I think I'd definitely put it on a Thursday night. What about you?
Yeah, I think this film is very entertaining. I think it's got a good runtime. I think, like I said, I think visually it's pretty awesome. The voice cast is stellar. I like where they're going with this, with the theming of this. I've said my criticism of the main protagonist, but in saying that, it doesn't undermine the film given where it ends up. So for me, I think this was a really interesting gamble that Disney took, and I really enjoy it. So I'm gonna, and I still really enjoy it, I should say. So I'm gonna give it a thumbs up.
And also, doesn't it make you wish that Disney did more of this?
Yeah,
like
totally.
Disney made more films like this. Like, like it's funny. You look at like the films they make today, like Wreck-It Ralph 2 and Zootopia and all that kind of stuff. Like they're deep and they're good films, but like they kind of don't have this really like.
I guess what I'd say about this as well is that like what I was thinking when I was watching this is that I wish visually that we could go back just for a little bit to some hand-drawn projects, you know what I mean? Or something that was kind of this era and this feel, you know what I mean? So I guess that's kind of along the same lines as well. But yeah, man, that is The Emperor's New Groove rated. Now, guys, we're going to get into some...
You spoiled it.
What?
The movie.
Oh.
Brenton, it's... where do we start with this movie? Like, you know what? Every scene is iconic. That's what I learned going through this. Like, there's very little scenes that don't need to be in the movie.
No, and most of them for me as a kid and even now, most of them revolve around the character Kronk. And I just want to start this segment off by saying that I think Kronk has and will always be an absolutely fantastic personality.
Oh my goodness.
This character, man, is just bloody brilliant.
He's so good.
Like, we could talk about this for days. We could talk about the spinach puffs. We could talk about his escape from the castle or his attempt to get rid of Kuzco's body. We could talk about his
Can we start maybe with the genius of having his conscience on his shoulders as the angel devil figure? It's so stupid, but it's such a perfect way of illustrating a character's morality, isn't it? Like,
totally. And what's even more genius about that is that they bring it back at the end, and we see that this is actually happening in real time. Like,
see, that's smart. I mean? Making a gag like inform the story, but you're not expecting it. That's genius. Totally. That's what this film does really well. Oh,
yeah, for sure.
I love it. I also love it when like what is it? The devil's like trying to make some points as to why he's right, and then he just like starts doing like some stand-ups, and then the angel's like, oh yeah, he's got a point.
Yeah, that's a great line. He's like, what are you like? Kronk's like, what are you doing? And it's like, whoa, keep watching. He's got a point. Like, that's a bloody great line.
Oh, it's so
many
good
one-liners, man.
They're just so smart. And you know what? I think the most Kronk of all scenes is the dinner scene where they invite Kuzco to dinner, because it's the one you and I've talked about the most. And you know what? It's still so good. And like, I was looking at those spinach puffs as well. They almost stole the movie, and I'm like, they still look really good. I still want to eat those spinach puffs, Brenton.
What's funny is that scene where Yzma says, well done, Kronk, and then he says, yeah, well, you know, like...
oh, Stewie, I'll give you the recipe.
Yeah, it's just so simple. It's great. Like, and a lot of the times as well, like, the animators did such a fantastic job with that character, because even when he's in the background of the scene, like, it's just funny to watch him, like, react to moments or, like, not react and be in his own world.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I love that he's pouring the potions and like Kuzco's not noticing. Like, you hear this big boom and explosion, and Kuzco's just like twisting his own ears. Like, it's so. I love as well when the potion, like, they all drink it, and then Yzma tosses it into the plant, and then later on the scene, the plant ends up being the shape of a llama.
Yeah, totally. Little details like that, man, just sell you. That's it.
It's so good. And it's funny because, like, in the movie, Kuzco admits that he knows about Yzma's secret lab, when he's like, "Oh, just go to the secret lab and turn me back." So it makes me wonder, like, what's the point of the secret lab in the first place if like Kuzco knows about it? Like,
Well, I think that's the gag, man. Like, I think it's so funny that Yzma thinks she's so secretive and so, like, subtle in terms of her espionage, and yet the fucking Emperor knows that she has this huge secret lair, which would be pretty hard to hide. He's just like, oh yeah, Yzma's secret lair. Like, so it's all kind of for nothing with Yzma, which is just hilarious.
Which is amazing, which obviously has the iconic line, pull the lever, Kronk. And I love that it's like theme park, like roller coaster thing to get into it. And if you've seen the TV show, have you seen the TV show based on this movie?
I remember watching it when I was younger, yeah.
Because they expand the gag and make it like all these different versions of a roller coaster ride, and it's really great.
So great.
I also love how useless the crocodile is, because they all encounter the crocodile at one point, and it always just like runs away like a scared dog. Like, it's great.
Yeah, I think all of that is just like, again, what this film does really well in terms of its character interactions and whatnot. It's just hilarious. Nathan, let's talk about one of the most famous scenes, which I still love, and it's that whole bridge scene when Pacha falls through the boards.
What does Kuzco say? Well, to make a promise, you gotta have hands.
Yeah, and Kuzco decides to leave him like a fucking asshole, and then Kuzco also like ends up coming down. They have a bit of a wrestling match. They fall through. There's actual crocodiles that actually, these ones look vicious.
Yeah, these ones are not the dog ones.
And they do that classic like team building thing of like pressing their backs together and walking up the cliff.
Does that work in real life, by the way? Like, can you walk up a wall like that?
It probably might work. I'm not sure whether it would work between a llama and a human being.
Yeah, I don't know if that would work so much. Brenton, should you and I try this after the episode? Just like back to back. Let's just scale up some walls.
Yeah, special segments, guys. Just give us a few seconds and we'll see how we go.
We'll put in our rock climbing gear. But it's really great. It is a great character moment for them. Although I do admit, watching this film, I did roll my eyes a little bit when they do it again at the end of the movie, because I'm like, oh, of course, they're applying the lesson they learned before. It's like, it's very basic as far as storytelling goes. Like, they reapply that lesson.
Yeah.
I don't know as much as I love it that, but I thought that great scene where Pacha realizes, no, Kuzco is an asshole. And it also builds up to that huge moment where Pacha finally attacks Kuzco. And it's like, I love that big punch that he gives Kuzco. It's reminiscent of when Pacha like swings on the vine to save Kuzco, but like he misses.
Oh, which is the whole Jaguar scene, I think, is fucking hilarious as well.
It's incredible. And also, I was raising my eyebrows because where does that squirrel get the balloon from?
Yeah, just from behind its back, I guess. It just whips it out.
It's like an old white Looney Tunes thing. It's like, oh, I don't know why this balloon is here, but here we go. Like, oh, it's so great. I think I laughed the most actually in this movie, speaking of the squirrel, of when Yzma finally like Kronk go out on their little crusade to find Kuzco. And Yzma's like stepping into the mud where the squirrel eventually reveals where Kuzco is. But as she's stepping into the mud, she like her scarf gets stuck in some of it and she swirls it around and it whacks her in the face.
Yeah. And the timing on that is just spectacular. Like how she's like, I hate this jungle, and that just splot on
I
the
remember
face.
going on so many hikes back in high school and like would be walking in the middle of a forest, and I remember quoting that, just be like, I hate this jungle, like or like I'd be in my school runners and I'd be like, these are my best shoes, like, and no one would understand the reference. Also,
Yeah, totally.
Yzma, why are you bringing your best shoes out into the middle of the Amazon? Like,
I was about to ask the same thing.
It's like, also those are her best shoes, like the most generic purple ones that she's been wearing the whole movie. It's like, really?
But Nathan, what's funny about that scene is that we established that Yzma has this like human-sized backpack that she is escorted around the back of Kronk's back.
It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life.
It's so
Kronk
funny.
carrying Yzma, like,
But not only that, it leads to one of the best gags in the film, which is when the chase scene happens at the end,
Oh
which
my
might be
God.
one of the best chase scenes ever.
with the best
in which-
jazz music I think ever.
Totally. For me, that's the best song in the film. But Kuzco and Pacha go first, and then Kronk and Yzma follow, and then they realize that there's these red markings, like map marks.
Like a map. And they all just like shrug it off, just like, oh, okay.
And then they look behind them and they realize that there's blue arrows following them, and then they just shrug it off and keep going. But that leads to this joke that basically, like, you think that Kronk and fucking Pacha and Kuzco have gotten to the palace first, and they're in the lair. They've gone down all the roller coaster. They've met the crocodile, whatever. They get into the space, and then it's like, oh, the vial's not there. And then Yzma's like looking for this, and they're like, how the fuck did you get here first? And Kronk's like, yeah, by all accounts, it doesn't make sense. He shows them like the map.
And he pulls down the map
of how like both of their trails of getting there, and it's hilarious. Like that still for me is just so funny. Like such a funny, and I thought it was funny as a kid, but I also thought it was kind of intelligent of like admitting that it's like, hey man, here's a huge plot hole that we created in the last like 20 minutes, but hey, we're just going to acknowledge that it's there and gloss over it and keep going on. Like, it's just fun. Zany,
it's so
stupid
much fun. And like, and it just acknowledges how like aware these characters are of the world, but none of them really care. Like, the stakes never feel that high because everyone's just too like funny. Like you understand there's risks, but like Yzma never once comes across as threatening. Like even when she finally reveals the knife underneath her leg, I never once thought she was actually going to slash him. Like there's no real stakes like that.
Well, it's interesting because I think the reason that there's no stakes is because, she never actually like carries out like any like killing or anything herself.
No, you never see her do anything that bad.
So she even like reveals this knife, picks up this knife, and you're like, oh fuck. And then she gives it to Kronk, who is the most unassuming, kindly guy that's, you know, his heart's always in the right place. And it's like, this guy is not capable of killing anyone. Like,
oh my god. But could you imagine if like the film did a 180 and suddenly like it does like a full Tarantino and just like Kronk like viscerally murders them and then like blood splurts everywhere as like Yzma laughs. As a child you'd be like, fuck, like this is way too much.
Nathan, I've never imagined that in my life, and now I have, and I want to go
it's
back
a little bit too dark
to 20 seconds ago.
Speaking of adulthood, I love that early on in this movie there's a scene where they like pretty much just show Kuzco using Tinder.
Yes. Because
he's got a bunch of girls in a row and he's just bloody walking alongside them swiping as the role advisor's just sweating going, oh, is this the one? Oh gosh.
He swipes left to all of these girls. But what's funny about it as well is that each of the girls is all the same character model, just with different hair.
I know.
In terms of the animation, it's hilarious.
And it's great. And as each girl gets rejected, they get progressively more pissed off. Like one's like raising her fist at them as it goes along, and I'm like, this is great. I could just see Kuzco in 2019 just bloody swiping on his smartphone in his giant throne, like just being like, I am the emperor. Oh.
I am the emperor now.
I am the emperor now. Brenton, I have some logic issues with this movie. Can you please explain to me how the old man survived the throw out the window?
Nathan, in animation, when the fucking Roadrunner like basically viscerally murders the coyote and he still survives each episode, do you question it?
I mean, no. I mean, you're very correct. But also, they're talking animals. Like, that really throws out suspension.
Yeah, and that's a talking elderly man.
Oh. I mean, because it's funny because the way the film justifies it is that he gets like caught in like one of the curtains or whatever, or like the banners outside the castle. But like, you see the height that this man is thrown. There is no way, even if he like lands in that banner, that he should survive. And it's like, and I remember as a kid feeling so sorry for him that this poor old man has just been hurled out a window, like,
yeah, poor Piglet.
by these guards who are for some reason like dressed like half red, half blue for whatever reason.
Yeah, who knows? But Nathan, I don't know if that's entirely true. Maybe we should test it.
Oh no, Brenton, to get back from me. It's my birthday. No. He's got me by the waist, listeners. Help. Thank you for putting me down. Thankfully no one saw that. Another iconic moment in this movie that we have to talk about is obviously the restaurant scene.
Yes. I was wondering when we were going to get to this. This scene is just great. It's fantastic, you know. It
might be the best scene in the movie.
Potentially, yeah. Like, the whole scene where basically, like, Kuzco and Yzma are walking into the kitchen where Kronk is one by one, like, to change their order and make it more specific is, like, absolutely hilarious. And he's mistaking them for, like, the same person. It's just wonderful.
What did they say when, like, Pacha and Kuzco are first, like, ordering from the menu? He's like, oh, that's right. Pacha says to the waitress, oh, it's our honeymoon. And then she's like, oh, bless you for coming out in public. And she's just got this dry wit that's just so perfect. And when she like delivers the food, she's like mazel tov. And she like throws this confetti in the most like I want to die kind of way. Like,
well, one of the most like random lewd jokes in that bit is when Kuzco like goes into the kitchen and there's the random passerby that sees like the llama ass like
that guy
under the poncho like swinging. And he, like, sees the butt, and he, like, looks at Pacha and goes, "Hey," and, like, gives him the thumbs up. I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is that doing there?
Yeah. I was like, and I don't know who that joke was for, but it's in there, and like, it's just, but you forget about it immediately because the film's so quickly paced. Like, I love when Kuzco's just chatting to the chef and he just gets more and more worked up and he quits, and Kronk has to like step in.
Yeah, it's a great segment. It's truly awesome. And Kronk, I love how Patch is just watching the whole thing, just like in disbelief, like what the actual fuck like is going on.
And it's great. And Yzma and Kuzco, you realize how similar they are as well. Like he really is like her de facto son to an extent, because like they order the exact by the end of the scene they order the exact same thing, and like the only reason she doesn't notice him because they're doing the same actions as well is that Kronk is like, oh, it's your birthday, and like he still thinks it's her birthday the whole way through,
which is just great. Nathan, one of the biggest revelations I had during this film, and it was a very serious revelation that taught me a lot about myself and the way I interpret things, was actually that, and I just want to say this really quickly, it's a simple thing to say, but Pacha wears a poncho, and Pacha is spelt basically poncho by replacing the O's with A's.
Oh
and
my
removing
god!
And removing the
N. Oh my god! I never noticed that before.
So I was always like, Pacha's in a poncho, and then I was like, oh.
You're like during the movie, like you drop your popcorn. You're like, wait a minute, like.
I'm sure that it's like it's actually like it's you know, it means something else or whatnot. I'm sure that's the case.
That's genius. I didn't even notice that. Like, and it's funny because he's defined so much by like his large poncho as well. It's like yeah, and thank God John Goodman's like there to match him as well. I remember reading that initially Owen Wilson was going to voice Pacha.
Oh Jesus Christ! No, thank you.
Oh, could you imagine? He's like, wow, you're a llama. Oh my god.
Well, Nathan, I think John Goodman knocked it out of the park. But you know what I think it's time for?
Oh, what's that?
Special segment!
Brenton, what are we going to talk about today?
Nathan, would the Emperor's New Groove make a good theme park ride? And let me change that question slightly.
Yes.
Would the Emperor's New Groove make a good Disneyland ride?
Yes. Are you kidding me?
Absolutely. Could you imagine like this like make it one of those like kind of Peter Pan-esque rides of where you go through kind of like the film, and you go to it through it like a little roller coaster type thing, like Yzma and Kronk's roller coaster, but you go through like segments of the film, maybe trying to catch Kuzco is like the goal of the ride, like with the animatronics and whatnot, and like you see Kuzco and you spot Kuzco and shit, and then you're like having a little fun wild ride. I think there's something in this, dude, with that epic music. Like that'd be so much fun.
I think that'd be amazing. Like, because initially when I was thinking about this, I thought, it's probably just like, you know, the roller coaster to get into Yzma's lab, and that itself could be a ride. But like, now that I think about it, I kind of like that you can make the whole movie into an experience. Like, as you're in the queue line, you could be like ordering things through like the menu at like the restaurant or something like that, or you could do like a whole area in a theme park dedicated to this movie.
I think it could still be quite roller coaster-esque. Like, I think the roller coaster bit, like going down into the lair is fun.
Yeah. Even if you're escaping Yzma, like you're like that scene with that chase scene where they leave the lab and like they're like trying all the different animal potions. Like we suddenly wear the whale with Kuzco and we're on top of him. Then we're flying with the birds. Like it could be a whole experience there.
Dude, I think it's made to be a Disneyland ride. I think it'd be so good.
And I think almost that might have always been put in because, and the reason it never happened is because of course this movie made no money when it was released. Which is such a shame. Like, it only made like 160 against $100 million. And I'm like, like it eventually did make money because the home DVD sales was incredible.
Went through the roof. I think it was like the best DVD that sold basically in 2001.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, my friend, because like I remember getting this DVD like day one. Basically, my dad picked this up for us, and we sat there and we watched it and had the best time. Had a movie night.
Oh, it's amazing. And like, so I can 100% see how like Disney could have milked this. And like, and it's so funny because I feel like with our generation especially, people talk about New Groove extremely fondly. Like that movie is beloved. So like, I'd be very surprised if Disney didn't milk it at some point later down the track or revisited this IP.
Yeah, well, I hope they do, but I doubt it, given that we got one spin-off film and one television series. Oh my god! So I doubt
we should say here, Kronk's New Groove is horrendous. Like, I've
never seen it.
Oh,
I've never seen it.
Oh, it's so bad, dude. It shits on the... Oh, God. It's great because it puts Kronk at the forefront, so they realize that Kronk was so good. But, like, in the same way that Jack Sparrow should not be a main character, Kronk should also not be a main character.
No. Yeah, I hear.
Brenton, I want to introduce a brand new segment to you that might be a recurring thing depending on how you like this.
Oh, okay, cool.
Our history of doing this podcast, Brenton, we've brought up some fan theories that on the movies that we've looked at. And so I've actually done a thing where I've researched some fan theories about the Emperor's New Groove, and I want to run them by you and test and ask you to see if these fan theories could actually be in practice in these movies.
Sure.
So I've got 2 here for you, and the first one I want to dive into, and I want to hear your thoughts. Also, your thoughts, listeners. Let us know if you've got any fan theories on this movie as well. Okay, the first one is Kronk was a Skrill before Yzma turned him into a human.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really, really good one. I like the sound of that. That's
and the
interesting.
justification for this, it comes from a Redditor called Twerking925. And the theory says that Kronk used to be a squirrel or a monkey before he was a human, and Yzma used her potions to make it happen. And the fact that Kronk can speak to and understand animals is evidence of this, because also he's teaching Boy Scouts on how to communicate with them. And Yzma refers to him at one point as a monkey, and she tells Kuzco she has no idea how old Kronk is, which means he's an animal.
In why does that mean he's an animal?
Because if she doesn't know how old he is, you know, she calls him a monkey at one point. You know, he knows how to talk to animals. He's the only one really who can do it. Like, I reckon he must have been an animal that she turned into a human.
I think the monkey thing is irrelevant if he was a squirrel. I just think it's irrelevant. Unless he's the monkey at the start of the film. But hey, that's okay.
Whoa. That's pretty wild. That's also a gag I don't think held up that well. I didn't like the monkey gag.
I didn't mind it. It was quick, it was short, it didn't really matter.
Just like Brenton and Ben, am I right, listeners?
Whoa, that was fucking hardcore. That was fucking brutal, like fatality. Holy shit, dude.
KO. There's a reason we have banter in the title, Brenton.
Jesus Christ, man. Holy shit. What was your other fan theory?
The other fan theory, to bring it back around, was that the fly that begs for help at one point that gets eaten by the spider is also a human.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That is probable. Yeah.
I think this one is more likely. It comes from a Reddit user called Lish94, and and when it says help me, this user outlines that the only animals in the movie that can talk are ones that have been transformed by Yzma. So I think just when she was experimenting, she turned this one guy into a fly, and then he just happened to be eaten by a spider.
What a horrible demise. What a sad, tragic tale. Yeah.
And you know what? If we did see her do this early on in the movie, like turning innocent people into animals, like even just as a short scene, I think that would have radically changed how we felt about Yzma.
Yeah, we wouldn't have liked her as much, would we?
No, God, no, Brenton. Ugh.
Nathan, I actually have a fan theory that I wanted to introduce to you right now.
Oh, Brenton, go ahead. I bloody love it.
So, again, I don't think this one, in terms of the plot, is very important. I think it's a bit of character flair that's in there. Potentially, maybe. And this is the question that I wanted to pose to you.
Oh, yes.
Is Kuzco homosexual?
You see...
Not that it matters. Not that matters at all.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
But and not that it really matters to the plot or anything, but it's interesting that we're introduced to this young emperor who's given his pick of these like gorgeous, stunning beauties that, you know, are all women, and he like literally... It's like he's already made the decision that he doesn't want, you know, he doesn't want a wife. It's one of the few Disney films where there is genuinely no romantic plot at all. No. He's also very effeminate. Like I think he's in terms of his actions and
very focused on his beauty.
And what he does. Yep.
It could work. Also, I think just the way he talks to Pacha, there is this weird sexual energy between them.
And I also think his interactions with Kronk are interesting as well. Like a
really?
lot of the time he kind of ignores Kronk once he starts to get to know him, but it's also like how he asks Yzma, which is like a gag at the start of like, oh yeah, who's that guy? You know? Who's Kronk? You know what I mean? Like,
it's funny because he fires Yzma but not Kronk.
Yeah.
Like maybe he wants to keep him around. That's really interesting. Maybe like, yeah. I mean, you could argue that the two men playing like bloody checkers outside Pacha's house could also be gay. Like maybe this kingdom's just very liberal with their views on sexuality. Like,
you know, I think it probably is.
Yeah, maybe. That would be... Because even in the sequel, Kuzco doesn't have a wife or even a girlfriend by that point. I want to say in the TV show, he does get a female love interest from memory. So sadly...
TV show's not canon.
No,
but I'm just going off the movie, bro.
No, I think it's not canon either, so... Yeah, I think he could be gay. I don't think... I can't see a thing that overtly contradicts that, so... Yeah, and that makes it pretty funny. Like, I like it. Just like the way, especially that Pacha carries him, I think is very flamboyant as well. Like, he's always just like outstretched when he's been carried. Like, it's great.
Ooh, it's blinding.
What stills this movie?
Well, Brenton, what stills this movie is a segment where one of us screenshots a frame from the movie that we think absolutely steals it. That's a bloody good time to look at. And if you listeners want to have a look at the photo we put up on Instagram during the week, We also put it on YouTube and check out all the social media for it. And the still I chose this week is the scene where they're bloody going like down the side of the cliff and they're trying to climb up it. And then Pacha like grabs a rope that's attached to a tree for whatever reason. And like Kuzco is like, you know, being held by like the tail, by Pacha as he's trying to get this rope so they can climb on up. And like these scorpions eventually like climb down, Pacha's back because of course there's scorpions and trees for whatever reason. And then Kuzco's head gets slammed to the side of a cliff where all these bats are sitting like calmly sleeping, and then Pacha whacks the cliff as he's trying to kill these like scorpions on his back, and all the bats decide to fly into Kuzco's mouth, which are like balloons with like maybe 30 balloons with 30 bats inside of it.
Now, what's funny about this shot for me personally is actually Kuzco's facial expression while this is all happening. Look at his motherfucking eye.
His eye. It could be rape.
Hey, man, he's being defiled right now, but like
Oh,
his
dear.
eye is just like, his expression is kind of like, well, shit, you know what I mean? Like it's absolute horror.
Kuzco's expression right now is such a mood, isn't it? It's just when everything goes wrong, or it's like, or when you've got like too many things going on at once. It's just like his face is like, woo!
Mate, that's a great still. Well done. Well done.
It's wonderful. So yeah, check it out. Check it out if you guys want to have a good laugh of it. Speaking of the visuals, hey, Blenton,
Yes,
let's look at this film's poster.
but is it art?
What do you think of this, Brenton? Do you want to describe it for the listeners here?
Okay, so what I'm looking at, and you can look at this on our Instagram as well, is the poster, obviously, for The Emperor's New Groove, and it features Kuzco in human form, with his hands out, splayed out, kind of like jazz hands, with this huge, behind him, in the background, is this huge, I guess, it's the word me, and then the tagline is, it's all about ellipses me, and it's this huge me that kind of takes up the space behind him. It's on a white background, and then The Emperor's New Groove, the title is placed under his right arm, between his arm and his body. Nathan, I don't think this is the best poster for this film.
agree.
I think this is kind of weak. It doesn't give us an inkling into how like kind of vibrant and fun this film is. This feels a bit bland. I also think like Kuzco's face is a bit terrifying for young kids and is a bit like demonic.
Putting him at the front and center, like, I agree. Like, he's also meant to be 17, and it's like, I don't think this is the character to draw them in.
Well, he's not really endearing. Like, and I've spoken about that before, but like, I mean, like his face is so harsh. Like in terms of the smile,
It's a very triangular face, isn't it?
it's quite. It's not even the design though. Like, because you see him in the film, and I don't mind his design. I think it's great. But this face is just terrifying. It doesn't sell your film. It's scary.
It's horrendous. Like, I don't think he should have been the front and center of it. Also, I remember as a kid thinking, okay, I'm gonna walk into this movie. Like, I remember not knowing what on earth it was about, apart from this character thinking it's about him. Like, it doesn't really sell the movie at all. Like, what it should have been instead is this beautiful vista of the Inca Empire. They should have just had one of those frames of like, or even like, you know, there's that scene where, not a scene, there's that one moment where Kuzco's standing on a rock and the light is like hitting him and like you can see it like causing like the dust to have like his shadow. I don't know if you remember this, like, right before he finds Pacha in the farm. I think that shot could have been a great poster.
For me, I think a vista's an interesting idea, but I think for me, what sells this film is the characters. So I think if you'd had Kuzco, Pacha, Yzma, and Kronk on this poster, and like an interesting background as well, I think that sells it, and like some fun poses, and maybe even Kuzco's in human form, like doing a dance or something.
Oh, his dancing is definitely a mood, isn't it?
Or maybe it's like at the start of the film, it's the frame of him like dancing on the stage with like the line of soldiers doing the river dance behind him, and he's there like doing the moonwalk, but his shadow going down into the audience is like that of a llama, not a human.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. It reminds me of the WandaVision poster we got of like how it's like Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen sitting on a couch, and you see like the Vision and the Scarlet Witch outline behind them.
I haven't seen that, but
oh mate,
yes,
exactly
that's what I mean.
that. Just like, you know, see the llama as a shadow. I think that would work perfectly.
So yeah, that's my suggestion.
Yeah,
but,
I like it. I think but it's definitely got places to go, doesn't it, Brenton?
That's it. But hey, our wonderful listeners, what do you think of this poster? Please comment on our Instagram and let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Or comment on our YouTube as well, or send us an email if you really want. We don't mind. Just get onto us. Let us know what you think of this poster.
Ooh, it's the title.
All right, Brenton, let's get into it. Title talk. The Emperor's New Groove. Did the Emperor have a new groove?
You know, I was thinking about this title, and I think it actually kind of works, because it's obviously ripping off the Emperor's New Clothes, right?
Yes, despite the fact they're about two very different things.
So, the Emperor's New Groove. Now, you could say that the new groove in this film, that is the new groove that the Emperor gains, is actually like Kuzco himself as a character. You know, he becomes like, as an emperor, he gets a new groove. He becomes more in tune with his people, with what they want and need. He learns to not be as selfish. Yeah, totally. So I feel like it's a good title if you don't take it literally as the Emperor's new groove, because he grooves at the start, but sure, he grooves at the end. But it's also how the character changes in their personality over it. So he's got a new groove on life.
Yes, I get the metaphor of that, but I just still think it fucks up a little bit because of the similarities it has to the Emperor's New Clothes. Like, I think people, especially who don't know this movie, go in with that expectation that it's maybe a riff on the Emperor's New Clothes when it bears little resemblance. So I feel like it is a bit confusing in that way.
But it's a good title.
Yeah, in saying that, I still love it, and I couldn't imagine this film being called anything else. You know what I mean?
Pass it here.
What?
The power to the people.
All right, we've spoken enough, Brenton. Let's see what everyone else thinks about this movie. Because Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it 85% and the audience gave it 83%.
That's pretty consistent, pretty good.
It's pretty high up. I don't know why this movie bombed, in the sense that, like, it had good reviews. Like, it's a good movie, and yet it must have been the time of year, or maybe it got released alongside something else that kind of hurt it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it's a true shame that we're never going to get that Disneyland ride.
Oh,
because
rip.
David N. Butterworth from La Movie Buff, I think it's meant to be buff, but it's like buff. Anyway.
He's buff.
David. Not without its amusing moments, but this animated Disney feature feels hurried and somewhat frantic in its approach. 2 out of 4. Hurried and frantic. I guess the pacing of this is quite quick, and I guess with what we know of, like, how this was made and the background of the making of this film, like, you could argue that, I guess, but I don't think it really. I never feel like on edge in this film, you know what I mean? Because I feel like it's been a rushed process, or, like, you know, there's too much happening, or it's just been kind of skimmed over, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like would you, Brenton, have wanted more quiet scenes? Like, we get, like, more soft-spoken character moments?
Maybe. Yeah, like, I mean, like, I wouldn't say no to them. I like the ones we get in the film, but I wouldn't say no to more.
Well, that's the thing. I think you're right, because I like the ones that are already there. I feel like if we had more, like, it would just lengthen the movie to where it doesn't need to be. Like it's so fast paced. I think if we did those deep moments, it just wouldn't match what the movie is. It'd feel just tonally inconsistent.
Sure.
Yeah, which is also like the greatest strength of this movie. It's an hour 20. It's so short, and, like, it's what it needs to be. Brian Webster on Apollo Guide didn't like it either. He said, it may be cool, but it's not great animated cinema.
Well, what's annoying about this review for me, and personally, and I think this a lot of the time when I read reviews like this, is that it may be cool, but it's not great animated cinema. Brian, could you give, like, an example of what you think great animated cinema is, so I can, like, you know, like, be the judge?
I guess, like, it doesn't look like a Ghibli film, or, like, it doesn't look like, you know, beautiful. Like, it's got nice imagery of, like, South America, but, like, I don't know, like, in the same way that I think there's that awe with Africa, I think a lot of the people coming into this would have hoped they did the same thing for Latin America, you know?
Maybe, but I'm just not sure what he means by it's not great animated cinema. I want to know what the great animated film, like, you know what I mean? Like, what he thinks is great animated cinema, and what is lacking from this film. Lennon S gives this 4.5 stars and says, ultimately, this movie is all about the laughs. The story and animation aren't the most memorable, certainly amongst Disney's fare, but the characters and humor stand as some of the best they've ever put out. See the movie for a good time and let the typical story of character growth hitch a ride alongside.
I think Lennon really hit it on the head. Lennon's not a lemon at all, Brenton. It's not a story about, like, overarching growth. It's not like a character radically changes where you you see the triumph of good and evil. It's just about laughing. I think this movie and the characters themselves outweigh that need for them to grow or change or develop in that sense. Because it's only Kuzco that has an arc, isn't it? Like, everyone else is just pretty much the same by the end of the movie.
I guess so.
Or except for Yzma. I guess because as a cat, she kind of wants to learn how to speak like a squirrel, so for whatever reason. So I guess she goes through some change?
Yeah, maybe.
Lyra H gave it 5 stars and wrote, the most quotable and infinitely rewatchable animated movie I've ever seen. Oh, she's so right. I don't think I quote any other movie more than Emperor's New Groove. in my private life. Like,
It certainly has like some killer one-liners. I'm not gonna lie. Like, and I remember them all. Like watching this again, I remember them all from like as a kid. So like, yeah, I think this film has got catchy lines and is very memorable in that sense. Yeah.
oh, there's just so many good. You know what I loved about watching it again today was just how many little lines I'd forgotten even now. Like, even when Kronk opens the window at the end, he's like, "What are the odds I'd end up here?" He's just looking out the window.
Oh, that's so funny, dude. Yeah.
Or even like when the guy's like, I've been turned into a cow. Can I be excused?" And then Ace was like, "You may go." Like, there's too many, Brenton. There's too many. We're spoilt for choice.
Liana Soares says Kuzco is like Deadpool, and she's not wrong.
No, she's not wrong. I never even thought about that before. Like, there's a lot of parallels with Deadpool in this movie.
Yeah, you could say that, I guess, yeah.
Do you wish then that Deadpool would turn into a llama, but like a killer llama?
I would never say no to Deadpool turning into
That's
a
what
killer
Deadpool
llama.
3 is, everyone. Bloody, we got the scoop. It's a new groove revival. They're both owned by Disney now, so. And lastly, KO6E wrote, "This movie was so far ahead of its time." And I agree, Brenton. How do you think this movie would have been received if it was like released today? Like,
Well, I just don't think this film would be made today, unfortunately.
yeah, I don't think like Iger's Disney would do something like this. Yeah.
No, gosh, no. No.
No, so it really was so far ahead of its time. I think that's why it will continue to be one of my favorites and like live on, and also so many other people's favorites. It's just genius. It is genius, Brenton.
Truly is. And I will continue to enjoy it for many years to come.
Yeah.
But until then, Nathan, that was The Emperor's New Groove.
He grooved all right. Oh boy.
Oh,
And
oh
we're
boy, it was
grooving now,
groovy.
Brenton. Let's get it on. Let's go. What's his name?
Banter. Guys, thank you so much for listening into Classic Movie Banter.
And dance with us. If you're listening to the podcast just as you're walking to work, strike a pose. Do it right now. Just see how the world reacts.
And whilst you're striking that pose, what would really help us out, and what we would really appreciate is if you guys would be if you what would really speaking of dance, fucking hell. And whilst you guys are striking that pose, what would really help us out and what we would really appreciate is if you guys would consider subscribing to us on the podcast app, on YouTube, on SoundCloud. Writing a review really helps us on the podcast app.
We
as
love
well.
it. It's so good. Like, it's great talking to you all and seeing what you know your thoughts in it. Like, I loved like how many people love Spinal Tap and like, you know, how much people like still watch this movie.
Yeah, and if you guys want to get in contact with us, obviously you can follow us on Instagram, which we've mentioned, but you can also follow our Twitter as well. And like we said, YouTube, the comments section is a lot of fun there, so feel free to comment on there as well. Yeah.
If you want to know what movie we're doing next week, we'll always put a photo of it up on Instagram so you get an idea of what we're going to be talking about every Monday.
But like I said, until then, man, what a fun time. That was a good time.
Bloody loved it, Brenton.
Well, Nathan, now that we've finished another hard slog that was an episode of Classic Movie Banter, have you got dinner ready?
Oh no! My spinach puffs!